I was stirring the soup when my daughter-in-law snatched the pot right out of my hands. "Who cooks like this? You are good for nothing!" Vanessa screamed with that voice I had learned to fear more than the silence itself. My son David was 10 feet away, sunken into that sofa I bought back when he still called me Mommy. He turned up the volume on the television. He pretended not to hear, just like always. The boiling broth splashed onto my hand, but I did not scream. I did not scream anymore. I had gotten used to the pain of the small burns, the kind that do not leave a mark on your skin but rot you from the inside out. Vanessa kept ranting about my seasoning, about my uselessness, about how I was a burden in her house. That word, her house, pierced through me like all the times before. This was my house, the house that Herb and I built brick by brick during 32 years of marriage. But I said nothing. I walked toward the cupboard with slow steps. My knees creaked. I am 68 years old, and my body charges me for every humiliation with a different kind of pain. I opened the door of the high cabinet, the one where I kept the white porcelain dinnerware with gold rims that had belonged to my mother-in-law, Madeline. It was valued at $8,000 by an antique dealer, the most precious heirloom of the Miller family. I took out the entire stack of plates. Vanessa stopped screaming. "What are you doing, you crazy old woman?" I did not answer. I just held that tower of porcelain with my trembling hands, those wrinkled hands that she despised so much, and I let it fall. The crash was beautiful. It was as if 50 years of silence had broken all at once. The plates exploded against the ceramic floor into 1,000 shiny pieces. Vanessa shrieked. David came running from the living room, his eyes wide, his mouth open. He froze in the doorframe. Amidst the fragments of porcelain that now covered my kitchen like dirty snow, I looked him straight in the eyes, those eyes that once looked at me with the love of a son. And I said with a calmness that even I did not recognize in myself, "If nothing I do works, then nothing matters anymore, right?" The silence that followed was more terrifying than any scream, because my son, for the first time in 3 years, was afraid of me. And that was just the beginning of what was to come. If you want to know how a woman of almost 70 took back everything that was stolen from her, subscribe and follow this story to the end, because what I did next, nobody saw coming. But to understand that moment, to understand why I dropped $8,000 to the floor without blinking, I need to tell you how I got there. How I went from being Margaret Miller, the owner of my life and my home, to becoming a stranger in my own house. And believe me, what I discovered along the way was worse than any broken plate. It all started 3 years ago on a Tuesday in October that smelled of autumn leaves and fresh coffee. Herb had died 6 months earlier, a massive heart attack while he was pruning the rose bushes in the garden. He fell among the flowers he loved so much, and I found him with dirt under his fingernails and an almost peaceful expression on his face. The man of my life left without saying goodbye, and left me alone in this 3-bedroom house in a quiet suburb with $250,000 in savings and a hole in my chest that no money could fill. David came to the funeral. He cried. He hugged me. He promised he would never leave me alone. For 2 months he kept his word. He called every week. He asked how I was, if I needed anything. I held on to those calls like a castaway holds onto a piece of driftwood. He was my only son, the baby who almost killed me at birth, the boy Herb used to carry on his shoulders, the rebellious teenager who at 20 asked for forgiveness in tears for giving us so many headaches. Then she appeared. Vanessa. They arrived together one Saturday afternoon without warning. David was wearing a wrinkled shirt and had dark circles hanging under his eyes like curtains. She wore a tight mustard-colored sweater and jeans that looked painted on. Perfect smile, immaculate nails, calculating eyes. "Mom, this is Vanessa, my girlfriend." She extended her hand with that smile I would later learn to hate. "A pleasure, Mrs. Miller. David has told me so much about you." I made coffee. I brought out the pastries I had bought that morning at the local bakery. We sat in the living room, my living room with the sand-colored denim furniture that Herb and I chose together 15 years ago. And David started talking. His business had gone under. "What business?" I asked. "An auto parts shop," he explained. He had invested all his savings with a partner, a guy named Gerald. Now he was in debt, $100,000 in the hole. The bank was pressuring him. He needed a place to stay while he got back on his feet. "Just a few months, Mom, I swear." Just until he got a job and could pay. Vanessa put her hand over David's. Her eyes shined, but not with tears, but with something I could not identify back then. "I will look for work too, ma'am. We do not want to be a burden. We just need a break." I looked at both of them. My son looked destroyed, defeated, and I, being an idiot, could only see the 7-year-old boy who used to come running to hug me when he got home from school. "Stay," I said. "This is your house." Vanessa smiled. David hugged me so hard I could barely breathe. I did not know I had just signed my own sentence. They moved in a week later, suit after suit, box after box. They took the master bedroom, my bedroom, the one I shared with Herb for 32 years, because it was bigger, and David needed space to work on his computer. I moved to the guest room. It faced the backyard and got damp every rainy season. "It is temporary, Mom," David said while he arranged his clothes in the closet where his father's shirt still hung. 6 months later, they got married, an express wedding at the courthouse without telling me until 2 days before. "We just want something intimate, ma'am," Vanessa explained with that sugary voice she used when she needed something. "Just us, you know, without complications." I went. I brought flowers. I cried in silence while I watched them sign, and they never left. Every time I asked when they would look for their own place, David changed the subject. Vanessa would sigh deeply and comment on how difficult the economy was, how expensive the rents were, how much she appreciated my generosity. Generosity. That word she used like a whip disguised as a caress. Little by little, the house stopped being mine. Vanessa changed the living room curtains, the ivory linen ones I sewed myself, for modern metallic gray ones. "Yours were already very old, mother-in-law. They needed an update." She moved the furniture. She took down the photographs of Herb and me from the wall and replaced them with abstract art she bought at a market. "We have to modernize this. Do you not think it looks like we are living in the 90s? I stayed silent. I swallowed my pride. I told myself they were just material things, that the important thing was having my son close. But it was not just that. Vanessa started imposing rules, schedules for my shower. "You use too much hot water and electricity is expensive." Restrictions in the kitchen. "Better let me cook, ma'am. You are too old for so much effort." Prohibitions on using the living room when they had visitors. "It is just that, well, you smell a little like an old person. Do not take it the wrong way." And David looked the other way. He buried himself in his phone. He went out to the convenience store just when I started to complain. "Do not complicate things, Mom," he would tell me when I managed to catch him alone. "Vanessa just wants order in her house." Her house. Those 2 words knocked the wind out of me the first time I heard them come out of my son's mouth. So 3 years passed. 3 years of becoming invisible in my own home. 3 years of washing their clothes by hand because the washing machine uses too much electricity. 3 years of eating alone in the kitchen while they had dinner in the living room watching Netflix. 3 years of listening to Vanessa criticize every single thing I did, from how I swept to how I breathed. And I endured it. Because he was my son. Because I was afraid of being completely alone. Because at 68 years old, the world outside was scarier than the hell inside. Until I found the papers. And I discovered that what I thought was hell was merely the lobby. The small humiliations are the ones that hurt the most, not the big ones. You see those coming. You prepare yourself. You defend yourself. It is the little ones, the ones that arrive disguised as concern or help, that eat you up from the inside until one day you look in the mirror and you do not recognize the woman looking back at you. Vanessa was an expert at those. It all started with the alarm clock. Every morning at 6 on the dot, she would knock on my door with her knuckles, 3 dry, authoritative knocks. "Mrs. Miller, it is time. Breakfast does not make itself." At first, I thought it was a temporary thing, but it became a routine, a ritual, an obligation. I would get up with my body aching. The arthritis in my knees attacked me worse in the mornings and dragged me to the kitchen while they kept sleeping in my bed under my sheets in my bedroom. I prepared scrambled eggs with ham bacon, warm toast coffee with cinnamon. Everything just how David liked it since he was a boy, but nothing was ever enough anymore. "The eggs are runny," Vanessa would say, pushing the plate away with disdain. "Do you not even know how to crack an egg, ma'am? The coffee is cold," she complained without looking up from her phone. "You let it sit too long again." David ate in silence, his eyes fixed on his plate, as if he heard nothing, as if I did not exist. Then came the laundry. "Ma'am, the washing machine uses way too much power." Vanessa announced one afternoon, hands on her hips planted in the patio doorway. "Besides, you do not pay a single dollar for utilities. The least you can do is wash by hand." So there I was with my 68 years and my hands that no longer had the strength they used, to kneeling in front of a plastic tub, scrubbing her silk blouses, her designer jeans, my son's underwear, which broke my heart to touch because it reminded me of when he was a baby and I changed his diapers. With all the love in the world. My knuckles cracked, my skin peeled. But I could not complain because it was the least I could do after so much generosity. That cursed word, again, generosity. Then came the curfew restrictions. "You cannot shower after 7 at night," Vanessa ordered. "The water heater consumes a lot of gas and we pay for it." "You cannot watch television in the living room when we have guests," she added another day. "It is just that, well, you smell a little funny. It is not personal, ma'am. It is just that, at your age, you know, the body changes." She humiliated me in front of her friends, in front of her parents. Once during a dinner she organized without telling me, she locked me in my room from the outside. "She is just very tired," I heard her tell the guests. "Best let her rest." I spent 3 hours in there listening to laughter and music on the other side of the door, knocking without anyone coming to open it until the party ended, and Vanessa remembered she had left me locked in. "Oh, sorry, mother-in-law, I completely forgot." And David, my son, the child I delivered after 22 hours of labor, did nothing. Absolute silence. One afternoon I confronted him. I waited for him in the hallway when he came out of the shower still with wet hair smelling of that expensive shampoo he bought with my money. "David, I need to talk to you." "Not now, Mom. I am in a hurry. It is important." He sighed. That sigh I knew so well, the one he used as a teenager when I asked him to clean his room. "What is it now, your wife Vanessa?" "She treats me badly, son. She humiliates me. She makes me feel like I am in the way in my own home." He rubbed his face with his hands. He avoided my gaze. "Mom, you are old. Do not complicate things. Vanessa just wants order in her house. If you do not like it well, you can look for another place." I felt the floor open up beneath my feet. "Her house, David, this is my house. I paid for it with your father for 30 years. "Yes, but now we pay the bills. We keep this running. You are just here. You are just here." Those 4 words left me breathless. My son looked at me as if I were an old piece of furniture that no longer served a purpose, but out of pity they did not dare to throw away. "What did that woman do to you, David? Where is the son I raised?" "I grew up, Mom. That is what happened. I am not your little boy anymore. I have my own family now." He walked away. He left me standing in the hallway with tears rolling down my cheeks, hugging myself because there was no one else to hug me. That night I did not eat dinner. I stayed in my room staring at the water stains on the ceiling, wondering at what moment I had lost my son. But the worst had not happened yet. Because 3 weeks later, while looking for an electric bill that Vanessa swore I had lost, I opened the drawer of the desk in the study, the one that had belonged to Herb, and I found a manila envelope hidden under some old folders. I opened it with trembling hands, and what I saw in there made the world stop. They were legal documents, notarized deeds, papers with the seal of a lawyer I did not know, and my name, Margaret Miller, widow of Smith, appeared again and again next to words that froze my blood. Mental incapacity, progressive senility, inability to administer assets. They were trying to declare me insane. They were trying to take everything from me. My own blood was stealing the house that Herb had given 30 years of his life for. My hands shook so much I could barely hold the papers. There were medical reports, fake ones because I had never been to that doctor, with invented diagnoses, declarations signed by witnesses who had supposedly seen my mental deterioration, everything carefully fabricated, and at the end of the file, a document that went through me like a bullet. Bank statements. From the joint account I had opened with David for emergencies, the one that held the $250,000 Herb left me. There was only $10,000 left. They had taken out $240,000, almost $250,000, stolen, by my son and that viper who called herself my daughter-in-law. I let myself fall into the desk chair, the same one where Herb sat to do the accounts on Sundays, and I sobbed until I had no tears left. How had I reached this point? How had I allowed them to destroy me like this? The answer was simple and painful. Because I loved them. Because they were my family. Because I was afraid of being alone. But that afternoon, among those papers that smelled of betrayal, something changed inside me. The fear began to turn into rage. And rage, as they would soon discover, can be much more dangerous than silence. I put the documents back exactly as I found them. With hands that still trembled, I folded every paper following the original creases, put them back in the manila envelope, and hid it under the same old folders. I closed the drawer slowly in silence, as if someone could hear me even though the house was empty. Vanessa had gone shopping. David was at a job interview. Just another lie in the collection they had built around me. I sat on the living room sofa, the one they no longer let me use when they were around, and I looked at the walls of my house as if I were seeing them for the first time. Herb's photographs had disappeared, the memories of 32 years of marriage erased as if they had never existed. In their place, soulless paintings Vanessa had bought on sale, $240,000. The number spun in my head like a vulture over carrion. That was more than money. It was Herb Sweat waking up at 5 in the morning for 30 years to drive his taxi. It was the nights I spent awake sewing other people's clothes to scrape together the down payment for this house. It was every dollar saved, every luxury denied, every sacrifice made, with the promise that one day we could rest. And my son, my own blood, had stolen it from me, while forcing me to wash his clothes by hand. But that was not the worst part. The worst part was the papers to declare me incompetent, to legally erase me, to turn me into a ghost in my own life. I closed my eyes. I took a deep breath. And in that moment, I made a decision that would change everything. I would not give them the pleasure of seeing me destroyed. During the next few days, I became a consummate actress. Every morning, I got up at 6, made breakfast, endured Vanessa's insults with my head down. I washed the clothes, scrubbed the floors, made myself small, invisible, harmless, but inside I was planning. I needed help. I could not face this alone. And there was only one person in the world I could trust completely. Eloise, my first cousin, 71 years of pure steel wrapped in elegance. A retired lawyer from Chicago with 3 successful children and 0 tolerance for nonsense. We had grown up together, shared rag dolls and secrets of youth. She was the only real family I had left. I called her on a Tuesday afternoon when Vanessa went to her yoga class, another thing she paid for with my money, and David was God knows where doing God knows what. Cousin. What happened? You have not called me in months. And then I broke down. I told her everything. The humiliations, the insults, the stolen money, the fake documents. Every word came out between sobs I could no longer contain. 3 years of pain condensed into 20 minutes of telephone confession. There was a silence when I finished, a silence so heavy I thought the call had dropped. Eloise, I'm here. Her voice sounded different, cold, dangerous. And are you going to allow that viper to take what Herb built with his sweat? Are you going to let your son, my nephew, rob you and erase you as if you were worth nothing? I do not know what to do. Well, I do. Listen to me carefully, Margaret. Those documents are worth nothing without your signature and a formal trial. Nothing. But if we do not act now, they are going to forge your signature or pressure you until you cave. Do you understand me? I nodded, although she could not see me. You need a lawyer. Today. Right now. I do not have money for... I have contacts. A colleague from the university who handles these cases. I am going to call him right now. But Margaret, listen to me well. You have to be strong. You have all the power here. The house is in your name. The money is yours. The problem is that you have bought into the story that you are useless. Her words hit me like a necessary slap in the face. It is time you remember who the hell you are, cousin. You are Margaret Miller, the woman who raised a son alone while her husband worked 12 hours a day, the one who built a home from nothing, the one who survived the death of her life partner. You are not the useless old lady that wretch wants you to believe you are. Something lit up inside me, a small but fierce spark. What do I have to do? First, do not touch those documents. Leave them there as evidence. Second, the lawyer is going to call you tomorrow. His name is Robert Malone. Trust him with everything. Third, you need proof of the humiliations. Do you have a way to record? I do not know how to use those things. Do you have trustworthy neighbors? I thought of Lucy, the girl in apartment 4B, a nursing student. Always kind. Always asking me if I needed anything when we crossed paths on the street. Yes, there is a young girl. Perfect. Ask her for help. Tell her you need to install cameras or record with your phone. Young people know about these things. We need evidence of how they treat you. Every insult, every humiliation, everything. Eloise, I'm scared. I know, cousin, but do you know what is scarier ending your days in a nursing home while those two spend your money on vacations? Is that what you want? No. Then fight. Fight with everything you have. And you are not alone. I am coming there this weekend. We are going to sink that viper and that ungrateful son until they beg for mercy. We hung up. I sat in the living room looking at my wrinkled hands. Those hands Vanessa despised so much, and for the first time in 3 years, I did not see them as weak. I saw them as weapons. The next day, Robert Malone called me. Professional voice, serious tone. He explained the legal steps to protect my property and my money. He told me I needed to act fast, block access to the bank account, gather evidence of fraud, document the abuse. Mrs. Miller, the law is on your side, but I need you to be brave. Can you do it? I looked toward the kitchen where Vanessa was making a smoothie with organic ingredients that cost $20. Ingredients I had paid for without knowing. Yes, I answered. I can do it. That afternoon, when Vanessa went to the salon, I knocked on the door of apartment 4B. Lucy opened with her usual smile. Mrs. Miller, so good to see you. Come in, come in. Lucy, I need your help, and I cannot explain everything, but trust me. I told her the basics. She listened without interrupting, and when I finished, her brown eyes filled with indignation. That wretch. Pardon my language, ma'am, but that is what she is. Of course I will help you. Look, I have some small cameras I bought for a school project. They can be hidden easily, and I am going to teach you how to record with your cell phone. We spent 2 hours practicing how to turn on the voice recorder on the phone without it being noticed, where to place the mini cameras, in the living room clock, in the kitchen vase, in the picture frame in the hallway. When she treats you badly, record everything, instructed Lucy. Every word. It does not matter how cruel it is. In fact, the worse, the better. I did not have to wait long. 2 days later, while I was making dinner, Vanessa entered the kitchen like a storm. "What is this garbage?" she screamed, pointing at the chicken stew I was cooking. "How many times do I have to tell you that David does not eat onions? Are you deaf or stupid?" My cell phone was in my apron pocket, recording. "Sorry, I forgot." Sorry. That is the only thing you know how to say. You know what? Do not even cook anymore. You are good for nothing. You are useless, a burden. If David were not so noble, he would have kicked you out years ago. Every word was recorded with perfect clarity. At your age, you should be grateful that we support you. Most old women like you end up abandoned eating scraps in some filthy nursing home. I kept my head down my hands, busy peeling potatoes, but inside I was smiling, because every insult was a bullet I would later use against her. For the next 2 weeks, I collected evidence like a patient hunter. The cameras captured Vanessa screaming at me, insulting me, treating me like trash. The audio recorded her cruel comments about my age, my smell, my uselessness. And then I found something I was not even looking for. One night, unable to sleep, I went down to the kitchen for a glass of water. It was 2 in the morning. The house was silent, but passing by the living room, I heard voices whispering in the master bedroom. Vanessa. But she was not talking to David. She was on the phone. I approached the door with my heart hammering in my chest. The wood was ajar just a fraction of an inch. I took out my cell phone, activated the recorder, and held my breath. "Do not be impatient, my love. Almost everything is ready," Vanessa was saying with a voice I had never heard from her, soft, affectionate, intimate. "The lawyer says that in a month max we will have the deeds. Yes, in my name. David suspects nothing. The idiot thinks I am doing it for him." She laughed, a laugh that froze my blood. "Obviously, I am going to leave him, Gerald. Do you think I married that imbecile for love? Please, he was just the means to get the house. Yes, the old lady is almost neutralized. As soon as I have everything signed, I will file for divorce, and we will take off to Cabo just like we planned." Gerald, the partner from the failed business, the partner who had stolen everything from them. There was no business. There never was. Everything, absolutely everything, had been a lie from the beginning. Vanessa was not only robbing me, she was robbing David too. And my son, so stupid and blinded, was part of the plan without even knowing it. I recorded for 10 minutes, every word, every laugh, every detail of the plan to leave me with nothing and abandon my son like a stray dog. When I went back up to my room, I was no longer trembling with fear. I was trembling with pure, crystalline rage. Now I had everything I needed. And best of all, they had no idea that the useless old lady had just become the most dangerous person in that house. The calendar read, March 15th, my 69th birthday, 1 year closer to 70. 1 year further from the Herb who used to sing happy birthday to me with his off-key voice while bringing me coffee in bed. I expected nothing. I had learned to expect nothing. But Vanessa had other plans. Mother-in-law, she told me that morning with a smile that did not reach her eyes. "We are going to organize a little dinner to celebrate your birthday. Something intimate, family only. What do you think?" She took me by surprise. For 3 years, my birthday had gone unnoticed. Not a congratulation, not a hug, not even a text message from David. And now suddenly they wanted to celebrate. "It is not necessary," I said cautiously. "I do not want to cause trouble." "Oh, do not be like that, we insist. Right, honey?" She nudged David, who was eating breakfast without looking up from his phone. Yeah, sure. Happy birthday, Mom." He did not even look at me when he said it. Something did not add up. My instinct, the one I had been ignoring for 3 years, screamed at me to be careful, but I nodded. I smiled. I pretended to be grateful, because now I knew how to play too. I spent the day preparing my own party. Vanessa had me cleaning the house, so everything looks presentable. I dusted, I mopped, I cleaned the bathrooms, I polished the mirrors. My knees screamed in pain, my back burned, but I did not complain. My cell phone in my pocket recorded every order, every hurtful comment. "Ma'am, clean that corner well. Do you not see it is full of cobwebs? Oh my God, at your age you cannot even see straight anymore. Hurry up, the guests arrive at 7 and the kitchen is still not done." At 6 in the evening, when I finished leaving the house shining, I went up to my room to change. I put on a burgundy dress I had not worn since Herb's funeral. I applied barely any makeup, just a little powder, discreet lipstick. I combed the gray hair that Vanessa always said made me look sloppy. I looked in the mirror. The woman looking back at me looked tired, but there was something new in her eyes, something hard, determined. "Happy birthday, Margaret," I told myself. "Let this be the last one you spend being a coward." I went down at 7 on the dot. The living room was decorated, gold balloons which I had inflated that afternoon, and a sign that said, "Happy Birthday," hung on the wall. The dining table was set with the embroidered linen tablecloth that had belonged to my mother, but when I saw who the guests were, my stomach churned. Vanessa's parents, her brother with his girlfriend, 3 friends of hers I had never seen, and that guy, Gerald. Yes, the supposed partner who had robbed them, sitting there as if nothing happened with a beer in his hand. Not a single person I knew. Not my friends from church, not Cousin Eloise, not the neighbors with whom I had shared 30 years of life. This was not my birthday party. It was Vanessa's party. I was just the excuse. "There is the birthday girl," announced Vanessa with a singing voice pointing at me as if I were a circus animal. Come, everyone, to say hello." They surrounded me with fake hugs and empty congratulations. Vanessa's father, a heavy-set man who smelled of cheap cigarettes, patted me on the back. "Many congratulations, ma'am. 69, wow, my mom did not even make it to 65. What a truly appropriate comment for a party. We sat down to dinner. Vanessa had ordered food from an expensive restaurant, pasta, gourmet salads, artisan bread, all paid for with the money they had stolen from my account. I sat at the end of the table, the spot of least importance, while Vanessa presided like a queen in my chair in my dining room in my house. David was next to her, smiling, uncomfortably pouring wine for the guests. "A toast," announced Vanessa's father, raising his glass. "To Mrs. Miller, who is lucky enough to have such a dedicated daughter-in-law to take care of her in her old age." Everyone laughed and toasted. I held my glass of water, they had not served me wine, and forced a smile. "Yes, it is lucky," continued Vanessa's mother, a thin woman with too much makeup. "At her age, many women end up alone, abandoned by their families. What a blessing that David and my daughter have taken her in. Taken me in. As if I were a homeless person they rescued from the street. No one mentioned that it was my house, that they were the ones I took in when they arrived with nothing." The dinner continued between laughter and anecdotes that did not include me. They talked about trips, about restaurants, about future plans. I was just another piece of furniture in the room, invisible, irrelevant, until Vanessa made the announcement. She tapped her glass with a knife to get attention. Everyone went quiet. She stood up radiant with that perfect smile she had perfected. "Well, since we are all gathered here, David and I want to share some exciting news." My son also stood up, taking her hand. "We are going to completely renovate the house," announced Vanessa, opening her arms as if she were presenting a project on television. "New bathrooms, modern kitchen, hardwood floors, everything. We already have the budget and we start next month." Applause, congratulations, how exciting, how wonderful. No one asked for my opinion, and she continued pointing toward the living room walls. We are going to throw out all those antiques Mrs. Miller has kept. Old furniture, ancient photographs, that porcelain dinnerware no one uses. All of that goes. The house looks like a museum from the 70s. Laughter, murmurs of approval. I felt like I was drowning. Those antiques were my life. Every photograph was a memory of Herb. Every piece of furniture, a story. The porcelain dinnerware had belonged to 3 generations of Miller women. "Excuse me," I said with a voice barely audible. "Those things have sentimental value. You cannot—" "Oh, mother-in-law!" Vanessa interrupted me, turning toward me with that expression of fake patience I hated so much. "At your age, you have to learn to let go of material things. Besides, we need space. You cannot live in the past forever." Vanessa's brother let out a loud laugh. "It is true my grandma was the same. She kept even torn underwear because it had sentimental value." More laughter. I sank into my chair, my cheeks burning with humiliation. Then Gerald, that damned Gerald who whispered dirty things to my daughter-in-law on the phone while my son slept, raised his glass. "Well, I toast to Vanessa and David, to the perfect couple who knows how to modernize an old house." Old house like me. "And we have to be thankful," added Vanessa, looking directly at me with eyes full of poison disguised as honey, "that Mrs. Miller is so understanding. At her age, many end up in a nursing home eating mush and watching television all day. But she has the fortune of being here with us, being part of the family." Uncomfortable silence. Some guests looked the other way. Others smiled nervously. But no one defended me. And David, my son, my only son, stood there, glass in hand, avoiding my gaze. "Well," said Vanessa's father, breaking the tension. "Where is the cake?" Vanessa clapped. "Ah, yes, I brought a special one. David, help me." They went out to the kitchen. The guests resumed their conversations. I remained seated in my corner with a lump in my throat so big I could barely breathe. They returned with a small cake, more suitable for a child than for someone turning 69 with little candles lit. They placed it in front of me. "Sing," ordered Vanessa. They sang "Happy Birthday" off-key fast without enthusiasm, like someone fulfilling an annoying obligation. "Make a wish, mother-in-law." I looked at the candles. I looked at the faces around me. Strangers, all strangers. I looked at my son, who finally held my gaze for a second before looking away. And in that moment, something inside me broke permanently. It was not just pain, it was rage, anger, burning indignation. But I said nothing. I just closed my eyes, made a wish they would never imagine, and blew out the candles. Tepid applause. Vanessa cut the cake, a tiny slice for me, generous ones for everyone else. We ate in uncomfortable silence. At 10 at night, the guests began to leave. Farewell hugs. "Many congratulations, ma'am. Take care of yourself. You're in good hands." When the last one left, Vanessa dropped onto the sofa with a dramatic sigh. "How exhausting. David, clean this up for me while I shower." My son obeyed like a trained dog, collecting dirty plates, glasses, crumpled napkins. I stayed seated in my corner looking at the remains of my birthday party that had not been mine at all. David passed by me carrying plates toward the kitchen. He said nothing. No "happy birthday" on the side. No "I hope you had fun." Nothing. I went up to my room with heavy legs and a heart even heavier. I took off the burgundy dress and hung it in the closet. I sat on the bed. That twin bed that creaked so different from the king size in my bedroom which they now occupied, and I took out the photograph of Herb I kept in the nightstand drawer. "Forgive me," I whispered to that black and white image of my husband smiling in his uniform. "Forgive me for being so weak, for letting them trample on everything we built together." Tears fell on the glass of the frame, distorting his face. "But no more, my love. I swear to you, no more." I put the photograph away. I took out my cell phone. I reviewed the day's recordings, every disguised insult, every public humiliation, everything perfectly documented. Then I dialed Eloise's number. She answered on the second ring. "Cousin, what happened? It is almost 11. "Eloise," I said with a firm voice, no tears left, "I need you to come tomorrow. Not the weekend. Tomorrow." "What happened?" "What happened is that I am done collecting evidence. What happened is that I already have everything I need. And what happened is that today on my 69th birthday, they humiliated me for the last time." There was a pause. "I am already packing my suitcase," replied my cousin, "and I am calling Robert to have everything ready. The game is over, Margaret. Now comes the war." I hung up. I turned off the light, but I could not sleep. Because for the first time in 3 years, I did not feel fear of the next day. I felt anticipation. The next morning dawned gray. Heavy clouds covered the sky over the neighborhood, threatening a storm. But I felt strangely light, as if something toxic had finally drained from my body during the night. I got up before Vanessa knocked on my door. I dressed with care. Jeans, a mustard-colored blouse, the knitted sweater Herb gave me for our last anniversary. I looked in the mirror, and for the first time in months, I recognized the woman reflected there, Margaret Miller. Not the victim, not the useless old lady, the woman who had survived poverty, difficult labors, the death of her husband, the one who had fire in her veins even if she had forgotten it for a while. I went down to the kitchen. I made coffee just for myself. I took a pastry from the pantry. I sat at the table and ate breakfast in silence, watching through the window as the clouds got darker and darker. At 9 in the morning, I heard footsteps on the stairs. Vanessa appeared in sweatpants and a t-shirt, hair up in a messy ponytail, yawning. "Good morning," I said calmly. She looked at me surprised. "You already ate breakfast, and ours." "I have not made it yet." Her eyes narrowed. "Excuse me." I said I have not made it yet. "If you want breakfast, the kitchen is there." The silence that followed was delicious. Vanessa stood in the doorframe, mouth slightly open, processing what she had just heard. It was probably the first time in 3 years that I did not jump to obey her. "Do you feel sick, mother-in-law?" she asked with that sugary voice she used when preparing an attack. "I feel perfectly fine, thanks." "Then I do not understand why." "Because I am 69 years old and my knees hurt. Because yesterday I cleaned this entire house for your party. Because I am tired. And because honestly, you too have 2 perfectly functional hands." Vanessa's eyes lit up with barely contained fury. She opened her mouth to respond, but at that moment the doorbell rang, loud, insistent, as if someone were knocking with urgency. "Are you expecting someone?" Vanessa asked suspiciously. "Yes." I got up from the table, calmly walked to the front door, and opened it. There stood Eloise. 71 years of pure elegance wrapped in a sand-colored suit, short hair, perfectly styled gold-rimmed glasses, travel suitcase by her side. She looked like a lawyer even on her day off, because that was what she had always been, a woman who took nothing from anyone. "Cousin," she said with a smile that did not reach her eyes. "Eloise." We hugged tight. She smelled of French perfume and determination. "Who is it?" Vanessa asked from the kitchen, peering out with an unfriendly face. Eloise entered, dragging her suitcase, looking my daughter-in-law up and down with an expression that could freeze lava. "I am Eloise Miller, Margaret's cousin attorney at law, and you are—" "Vanessa David's wife, the owner of this house." Oh, what a mistake. Eloise let out a dry laugh. "The owner? Interesting, because according to the deeds I reviewed yesterday with the notary, the only owner of this property is Margaret Miller, widow of Smith. But, well, perhaps you have information that I am unaware of." Vanessa's face went pale. Then it turned red, then purple. I meant that—" "Do not worry, I know exactly what you meant." At that moment, David came down the stairs, rubbing his eyes. What is all this noise, Mom? Who? Aunt Eloise? David, long time no see nephew. Her tone was cold as an iceberg. The last time we saw each other was at Herb's funeral. 3 years. Not a call, not a visit. David swallowed hard. It is just that we have been busy with stealing from your mother. Yes, I heard. Absolute silence. Vanessa took a step forward. Excuse me, who do you think you are to come here and... I am the cousin who is going to make sure you pay for every dollar you stole from Margaret, and every humiliation, every insult, every day of mistreatment. Eloise took her cell phone out of her purse. Do you want me to play the recordings now, or do you prefer to keep pretending? Vanessa's eyes opened like saucers. Recordings? What are you talking about? About the 27 audio recordings where you insult my cousin, about the videos where you treat her like trash, about the phone conversation where you tell your lover Gerald that you are going to leave David as soon as you have the house in your name. David stumbled as if he had been punched. What, Gerald? What is she talking about? Vanessa turned white as a sheet. That is a lie. This old woman is inventing... Do you want me to ask your husband if it is a lie? Eloise pressed a button on her phone. Vanessa's voice filled the room. Do not be impatient, my love. Almost everything is ready. The lawyer says that in a month, max, we will have the deeds. Yes, in my name. David suspects nothing. The idiot thinks I am doing it for him. I watched my son crumble, literally. He collapsed onto the stairs, hands on his head, breathing raggedly. Obviously, I am going to leave him, Gerald. Do you think I married that imbecile for love? Please. He was just the means to get the house. Turn it off, whispered David. Please turn it off. Eloise stopped the recording. The silence that followed was so dense you could cut it with a knife. Vanessa tried to recover. That is taken out of context. I have 12 minutes of full audio. Eloise interrupted her. Do you want me to continue? I also have the bank statements showing the $150,000 you withdrew from Margaret's account and the fake documents you prepared to declare her incompetent. Shall I go on? No one spoke. I stood there next to Eloise, arms crossed, watching how the castle of lies they had built collapsed brick by brick. David looked up at Vanessa. He had tears in his eyes. Is it true? Is all this true? Vanessa opened her mouth, closed it, searched for words she did not find. Answer me, my son screamed, standing up. Is it true? David, if you let me explain. Answer. Yes, she exploded finally. Yes, it is true. Happy to know you were used. Because that is what you are, David. A means to an end. A useful idiot who... The slap resonated through the entire house. David had slapped Vanessa. His hand was trembling. I had never seen him so furious. Get out, he said with a broken voice. Get out of this house right now. This house is mine too, spat Vanessa, her cheek red. We are married. I have rights. This house, I said, speaking for the first time since Eloise arrived, was never yours, nor will it ever be. And if you do not leave in the next 5 minutes, I am calling the police and pressing charges for fraud, theft, and abuse. Vanessa looked at me with pure hate. This is not going to stay like this. I am going to sue you. I am going to... Go ahead, said Eloise with a sharp smile. Do it. That way in court, I can present all the evidence officially. The judge is going to love the videos where you insult a 69-year-old woman in her own home. Vanessa trembled with rage. She looked at David, seeking support. My son turned his face away. You are a coward, she spat at him. Just like your mother. 2 pathetic cowards. 3 minutes, I said without flinching. Vanessa went up the stairs like a storm. We heard her opening drawers, throwing things, cursing. 15 minutes later, she came down with 2 suitcases, hair-messy eyes burning with fury. This does not end here, she hissed before leaving and slamming the door. When the sound of her heels faded into the distance, David collapsed. He fell to his knees in the middle of the living room, sobbing like a child. "Mom, I did not know. I did not know anything about Gerald, about the money, about the documents. I thought—" I did not move. I just looked at him from above. This son who had betrayed me, who had let me be humiliated for 3 years, who had chosen silence over defending me. "You thought what David—" I asked with a calm voice. "Did you think it was okay for her to treat me like trash? Did you think I deserved to sleep in the guest room while you two occupied my bedroom? Did you think washing your clothes by hand at 69 years old was fair? I am an idiot, a coward. You are right. I did not defend you. I saw how she humiliated you, and I did nothing. Forgive me, Mom, please." Tears ran down his face. He seemed sincere, destroyed, broken. But I had also been destroyed and broken, and no one had helped me. "I do not know if I can forgive you, David," I said finally. "I do not know if I will ever be able to forget that when I needed you most, you abandoned me, that you chose that woman over your own mother. I know, and I hate myself for it. But give me a chance, just one chance to fix it." Eloise put her hand on my shoulder. "The decision is yours, cousin." I looked at my son, 38 years old, kneeling on the floor, crying like the boy he once was, and I felt something strange in my chest. It was not forgiveness, not yet, but maybe it was something similar to the possibility of forgiveness. Someday. Maybe. "Get up," I said, "and listen to me well. Starting today, things are going to change in this house. This is my house. You are here because I allow it. And if you want to earn back even an ounce of my trust, you are going to have to work very hard." "Anything," he sobbed. "Anything, Mom. First, you are going to look for a job. Today, not tomorrow. Today. Second, you are going to pay back every dollar you stole from my account. I do not know how, but you are going to do it. Third, you are going to go to therapy because you have serious problems you need to fix." He nodded frantically. "Yes, yes. Everything you say. And fourth," I added with a softer voice, "you are going to help me recover the house your father and I built. You are going to take down those horrible paintings Vanessa put up. You are going to hang Herb's photographs back up. You are going to give this place its soul back. I will do it, I promise you." I do not know if I believed him. Honestly, in that moment, I did not know if I would ever believe in my son again, but at least he had taken the first step, and I had recovered my voice. The days that followed were strange, like waking up from a long nightmare and discovering that the world kept turning, but everything looked different, sharper, more real. Eloise stayed with me. We put her suitcase in the guest room, my bedroom, that I finally recovered, while David moved to the smallest room, the one facing the backyard. He was no longer the king of the house. He was barely a tolerated tenant. And I needed things to stay that way for a while because although Vanessa had left the house, the legal battle was just beginning. "Listen well, cousin," Eloise told me that night while we drank chamomile tea in the living room. My living room with my furniture back in its place. Vanessa is going to counterattack. She is a cornered viper, and those are the most dangerous kind. She is going to look for lawyers. She is going to try to claim marital rights. She is going to invent stories. Can she do it? Can she take something from me? Legally, no. The house has been in your name since before the marriage. It is your individual asset. But that does not mean I am not going to try. That is why we need to be 3 steps ahead of her. Robert Malone, the lawyer Eleanor had found for me, came the next day. He was a man in his 50s wearing an impeccable gray suit, carrying a worn leather briefcase that spoke of years of experience. The 4 of us sat in the dining room. Robert, Eleanor, David, and I, with documents scattered over the wooden table that Herbert had bought at an auction 20 years ago. "Mrs. Margaret." Robert began adjusting his glasses. "The situation is serious but manageable. First, the good news. You have solid proof of fraud, misappropriation, and abuse. The videos and audios are undeniable evidence. The forged documents to declare you incapacitated are a serious felony. And the bad news, I asked. Recovering the stolen money is going to be complicated. Your son and daughter-in-law spent those $60,000, some on renovations that added value to the house, which can be argued as an investment, others on personal expenses that will be difficult to trace. I looked at David. He was pale with deep dark circles under his eyes. He had not slept well since Victoria left. "What did you spend my money on?" I asked directly. My son swallowed hard. I do not know everything. Victoria handled the finances. But I know she remodeled the master bedroom, changed the floors, bought new furniture, paid for her car. Her car? A Mazda CX, 2024 model. $38,000. It is in her name. The rage climbed up my throat again. Almost $40,000 on a car. With my money. "We can repossess the vehicle," said Robert, taking notes. "We can also file criminal charges for fraud. But Mrs. Margaret, I need you to understand something. A trial like this can last for years. It is emotionally and economically draining." "What do you recommend then?" Robert exchanged a look with Eleanor. My cousin nodded slightly. "There is another option," the lawyer continued. "Faster, more. Forceful. But it requires you to be willing to play a little dirty." "How dirty?" A small smile crossed his face. "Legal, but intimidating. You see Victoria Sanders, that is your daughter-in-law's name, right? She has a history that we investigated. 3 previous jobs where she was fired for accounting irregularities. A civil lawsuit in Cleveland for scamming an elderly man. It never went to trial because they reached an out-of-court settlement, but the file exists." I straightened up in my chair. She had done this before. Apparently, yes. She has a pattern. She approaches men with older mothers who own properties. She seduces them. She gets married fast. She tries to take over the assets. And when it does not work, or she gets what she wants, she disappears. David covered his face with his hands. "Oh my God, was I that stupid?" "Yes, you were," I said without mercy. "But now you are going to help me fix it." Robert unfolded a plan on the table. "Here is my proposal. We prepare a legal package so solid that when she sees it, Victoria understands she has no escape. Criminal lawsuit for fraud, civil lawsuit for damages, repossession of the vehicle, restraining order. And this is important, the threat of public exposure. Public exposure, social media, local Facebook community groups, a well-told story about how a woman took advantage of a 69-year-old lady. In this era, public shame can be more effective than any trial." Eleanor smiled with satisfaction. "What Robert proposes is to pressure her until she accepts a deal, that she returns what she can, that she signs papers renouncing any right to this property, and that she gets out of Ohio forever. And if she does not accept, then we activate everything. We sink her legally and socially. But my experience tells me she will accept. Predators like her prefer to flee rather than face consequences." I looked at the documents, the photographs of Victoria that Robert had obtained, the old files, the evidence that I had collected myself for weeks. "Do it," I said finally. "Prepare everything. But I want to be present when you hand it to her." Robert nodded. "It will be done. I need a week to assemble the full file. Meanwhile, Mrs. Margaret, it is crucial that you have no contact with her. No messages, calls, or casual encounters. Total silence." During that week, I dedicated myself to reclaiming my house. With the help of David, who worked like a man possessed, perhaps trying to atone for his guilt, we removed every trace of Victoria. The abstract paintings went to the trash, the gray curtains donated, the modern cushions she had bought given to Lucy, my neighbor. We hung Herbert's photographs back up, my husband smiling with his cab impeccably clean. The two of us in Florida during our honeymoon, David as a baby in his father's arms, the family we had been. "I am sorry, Dad," David whispered while hanging a photograph in the living room. "I am sorry I allowed them to erase your memory from this house." I said nothing. I just kept cleaning. We reclaimed my bedroom. We took out the expensive furniture Victoria had bought with my money and put back the cedar wood bed that Herbert built with his own hands, the antique dresser that had belonged to my mother, the ivory-colored knitted quilt that took me 6 months to finish. Every object that returned to its place was like recovering a piece of my soul. One afternoon, while organizing the drawers of the dresser, I found something that stopped me in my tracks. A navy blue velvet box hidden under some sweaters. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside were jewels. My jewels. The ones I thought I had lost or that Victoria had thrown away. The pearl necklace that Herbert gave me on our 20th anniversary. The gold earrings with small rubies that belonged to my grandmother. The engagement ring that I no longer wore because arthritis swelled my fingers. Victoria had hidden them. She probably planned to sell them or keep them. I called David. "Look at this." My son went pale when he saw the jewelry. I did not know that she... How many more things did you not know, David? How many times did you not want to see? He crumbled onto the bed with his head in his hands. Every day I discover something new. Every day I realize how blind I was. How could I be such an idiot? For the first time since Victoria left, I felt some compassion for my son. He had also been a victim, manipulated, used, but that did not erase what he had done to me. "David," I said, sitting next to him, "I want you to understand something. Victoria may have deceived you. She may have manipulated you. But when she humiliated me, when she insulted me, when she treated me like trash, you were there conscious, awake, and you chose to do nothing. I do not know if I can ever forgive you completely for that. Honestly, I do not know. But if you want even a chance, you have to earn it. With actions, not with words. I will do whatever is necessary, Mom, I swear. Then start looking for a job for real, no excuses." He nodded, and to my surprise, he followed through. 3 days later, he got a job at a hardware store. It was not a big deal, a floor salesman, $2,000 a month, but it was a start. I saw him leave that first morning with an orange uniform and a lunchbox that I prepared for him, and for a second, I saw the 20-year-old boy who worked at a gas station to pay for college. Maybe not everything was lost. On Friday of that week, Robert called. "Everything is ready, Mrs. Margaret, the complete file. When do you want us to deliver it to Victoria?" Where is she now? Renting an apartment in the North Side. She lives with Jerry Stone, her lover. He also has a record, by the way. Minor fraud, bad checks. Of course, snakes always slither together. I want to hand her the papers in person, I said. I want to see her face when she understands she lost. "Mrs. Margaret?" Robert's voice sounded cautious. "I do not know if that is a good idea. These situations can become volatile. I will go with Eleanor and you. I will not be alone, but I need to do this. Do you understand?" There was a pause. "I understand. Then let us schedule the meeting for Monday, in my office. Neutral ground. I will tell her it is to negotiate the divorce. That will make her come." I hung up the phone. Eleanor was looking at me from the sofa with a proud smile. "Ready for the final round?" "More than ready," I replied. It is time for Victoria Sanders to learn that a 69-year-old woman can be much more dangerous than she appears. And so, with my heart beating strong but steady, I prepared for the moment I had been waiting for, the moment the hunter would become the prey. Monday dawned clear, as if even the sky knew that something important was going to happen that day. I dressed with care. A terracotta-colored pantsuit, comfortable closed shoes, the pearl necklace I had recovered. Nothing ostentatious, but not the defeated old lady Victoria expected to find either. I looked in the mirror. The woman reflected there had dark circles. She had not slept well, but her eyes shone with something that had been absent for 3 years. Pure determination. "Ready?" asked Eleanor from the door of my bedroom. She was also impeccable in a pearl gray suit and her leather briefcase under her arm. "Ready." David was waiting for us in the living room. He insisted on accompanying us. "It is my responsibility too, Mom. I need to be there." I did not argue. Maybe it was time for my son to face the consequences of his decisions head on. Robert Malone's office was downtown on the 3rd floor of a restored brick building. We arrived 20 minutes before the agreed time. 10 in the morning. Robert received us in his office, a spacious room with bookshelves full of legal volumes and an antique mahogany desk. Victoria confirmed her attendance, he informed us while pouring coffee. She will come with Jerry Stone, and probably with some cheap lawyer she found. "How solid is our case?" I asked. Robert smiled with that quiet confidence of someone who knows he holds all the winning cards. "Mrs. Margaret, our case is not solid. It is armored. We have audio-visual evidence bank documents, witnesses her criminal record. If this goes to trial, they will destroy her, and she knows it." Then why did she accept to come? Because she still thinks she can negotiate, manipulate, get something out of it. Scammers always think they are smarter than everyone else. At 10 o'clock, exactly, the reception bell rang. My heart raced. I took a deep breath. Eleanor squeezed my hand. The secretary opened the door to the conference room, a room adjacent to the office with a long glass table and black leather chairs, and they walked in. Victoria looked different. Thinner, dark circles poorly covered with makeup hair pulled back in a high ponytail that made her look harder. She was wearing tight jeans and a champagne-colored silk blouse, probably bought with my money. Beside her walked Jerry Stone, a man in his 40s, unkempt beard, wrinkled shirt, the smile of a used car salesman, and behind them a short guy in a poorly ironed suit carrying a worn-out briefcase, the cheap lawyer Robert had predicted. When Victoria saw me, something crossed her face. Surprise, fear, rage. I could not identify it, but she definitely did not expect to see me there. "What is she doing here?" she asked with a sharp voice, pointing at me as if I were a cockroach. "It is her house we are talking about," Robert replied calmly. "She has every right to be present." I thought this was to negotiate the divorce between David and me. "Oh, it is, but it is also to discuss other matters. Please take a seat." They sat on the other side of the table. Victoria avoided looking at me. Jerry observed me with barely disguised contempt. The cheap lawyer took out a notebook and a pen. We sat on the opposite side. Robert in the center, Eleanor to his right, me to his left, David next to me, like a tribunal. Robert opened his briefcase and took out a thick folder. He placed it on the table with a dry thud that resonated in the silence. "Good, let us begin. Mrs. Victoria Sanders, you are here because my client, Mrs. Margaret, has several serious accusations against you." The cheap lawyer cleared his throat. "With all due respect, counselor, my client is not obligated to—" "Your client," Robert interrupted him with a voice of steel, "committed fraud, misappropriation, abuse, and conspiracy to commit asset fraud. If you do not want to hear what I have to say, you are free to go. But then we will file criminal charges this very afternoon. Do you want to leave?" "Silence. Good. Let us continue." Robert opened the folder. He took out copies of bank statements and slid them across the table. "Between January of 2023 and October of 2025, you and David withdrew $60,000 from a bank account belonging to Mrs. Margaret, money that was not yours. That is called theft." "Those were household expenses," Victoria protested, recovering some composure. "We maintained everything. Electricity, water, gas, food. We had the right." $38,000 on a car, asked Eleanor with a sharp voice. "Was that a household expense?" Victoria clenched her jaw. Robert took out another document. Then we have this, forged notarized documents attempting to declare Mrs. Margaret mentally incapacitated, forgery of signatures, fraudulent medical reports. The cheap lawyer went pale. I would have to verify. We already verified it. The doctor who supposedly signed those reports does not even exist. It is a made-up name. That is forgery of a public document. A felony. He slid more papers across. Victoria looked at them as if they were poisonous snakes. We also have this. Robert took out a USB drive and connected it to a laptop. The screen was projected on the white wall behind us. 27 videos documenting verbal and psychological abuse toward my client. Do you want to watch some? It is not necessary, murmured the cheap lawyer. I insist. Robert pressed play. Victoria's voice filled the room. Who cooks like this? You are useless. At your age, you should be grateful we support you. Video after video, insult after insult, humiliation after humiliation. Victoria's face turned redder with every second. Jerry shifted uncomfortably in his chair. The cheap lawyer took notes frantically. When it finished, the silence was deafening. Elder abuse, said Robert, closing the laptop. Another crime, and finally, he took out one last recording, the one from the phone conversation. No, whispered Victoria. You cannot. Oh, yes, I can. He pressed play. Do not be impatient, my love. Everything is almost ready. David tensed up beside me. Although he had already heard that recording, hearing it again aloud seemed to destroy him once more. David does not suspect a thing. The idiot thinks I am doing it for him. Jerry sank into his chair, avoiding everyone's gaze. Obviously, I am going to leave him, Jerry. Do you think I married that imbecile for love? Please. It was just the means to get to the house. When the recording ended, Victoria was trembling with rage. Or fear. Maybe both. That recording is illegal, she spat. You cannot use it in this state, Eleanor interrupted with a smile. One party can record a conversation without the other's consent if they have reasons to protect themselves from a crime, and my cousin had plenty of reasons. Robert closed the folder. Now, Mrs. Victoria, let us do the math. We have asset fraud document, forgery, elder abuse, and conspiracy. If this goes to trial, you are looking at between 5 and 10 years in prison minimum. The cheap lawyer swallowed hard. Counselor, perhaps we can reach an agreement. Oh, absolutely. That is why you are here. My client is willing to not press criminal charges if the following conditions are met. He took out a new document. He read it aloud. 1. Immediate return of the Mazda CX-5 vehicle, which will be sold and the money returned to Mrs. Margaret's account. 2. Signing of a voluntary divorce without claiming anything from David's or Mrs. Margaret's assets. 3. Restraining order. You cannot get within 500 yards of any of them. 4. Payment of $10,000 for moral damages. And 5. Immediate departure from the city. Victoria exploded. That is ridiculous. I am not going to accept. The alternative, said Robert with a quiet but lethal voice, is that we present all this to the district attorney today. We will also consider public exposure. Social media, local groups, news outlets, a story about how a woman took advantage of a vulnerable elderly lady. We already prepared the press release. We just need to press post. Victoria went pale. In this digital era, public shame could be worse than jail. She looked at Jerry, seeking support. He avoided her gaze, the coward. Her voice broke. I do not have $10,000. Then get them, I said, speaking for the first time. All eyes turned to me. Sell whatever. Ask your family. I do not care. But either you pay me or you go to jail. We looked at each other across the table. Predator and prey. But now the roles were reversed. You have until Friday, added Robert, to sign all the documents and deliver the money. Otherwise, we activate the entire legal process." "It is not fair," Victoria cried. I just wanted—" "What?" I asked with a hard voice. "To rob me, take my house, destroy my family, humiliate me every day. Which of those things did you just want to do?" She did not answer. She just cried with her hands covering her face, but they were tears of rage, not regret. "The meeting is over," declared Robert. "You have until Friday at 5 in the afternoon. After that, there is no turning back." They stood up. Victoria almost ran toward the door, followed by Jerry and the useless lawyer. But before leaving, she turned toward me one last time. "I will not forget this," she hissed with poison in every word. "Someday you will regret—" "What?" I interrupted her, standing up. "Defending myself, recovering what is mine, no Victoria. The one who is going to regret something is you. You are going to regret having underestimated a useless old lady." She left, slamming the door. When her footsteps faded in the hallway, I let myself fall into the chair. My legs were trembling. My heart was beating so fast I thought it would burst out of my chest. Eleanor hugged me. "You did it perfectly, cousin. Perfectly." David looked at me with something that could be admiration or shame or both. "Mom, "No," I said, raising my hand. "Not yet. First let this end. Then you and I will talk." Robert was putting away the documents with a satisfied smile. "Let us make a bet. Do you think she'll come on Friday?" "She will come," said Eleanor confidently. "Cowards always choose the easiest path." And she was right. On Friday, at 3 in the afternoon, 2 hours before the deadline, Victoria appeared in Robert's office, alone, without Jerry, without a lawyer. She brought the signed documents, a certified check for $10,000, and the keys to the Mazda. She did not say a word. She just put everything on the desk, signed the last divorce papers and the restraining order, and left. I watched her leave from the office window. She walked hunched over, defeated, with a small suitcase dragging behind her. A cab picked her up on the corner, and just like that, Victoria Sanders disappeared from our lives. "It is over," whispered Eleanor. "It is over," I repeated. But something did not leave me completely calm. A strange sensation in my stomach, like when you know the storm has passed, but the air still smells like rain. And I was right to be suspicious, because 3 days later I would discover that Victoria had not been the only snake in my house. There was another one, closer, more painful, and his betrayal would hit me in a way I never imagined. 3 days after Victoria signed the papers, life began to recover an almost normal rhythm. Almost. David continued working at the hardware store. He left early, came back, tired, ate dinner in silence, and locked himself in his room. We barely spoke. The wound between us was still bleeding, although no longer gushing. Eleanor had stayed 2 weeks longer than planned. "Just to make sure everything is in order," she said. But I knew the truth. She was afraid to leave me alone still. Afraid that I would fall back into that pit of silence and submission. I was not going to fall. Never again. It was a Wednesday afternoon. Eleanor had gone out to the market to buy ingredients for dinner. David was at work. I was in the living room sewing a button on one of my blouses. Those small domestic tasks that I used to do automatically and that I now performed with a strange sensation of recovered peace. The doorbell rang. I put the sewing aside and walked toward the door. I looked through the peephole. A man I did not know. Gray suit, navy blue tie, briefcase in hand, professional appearance. I opened the door cautiously, leaving the security chain on. "Yes, Mrs. Margaret. Who is asking?" "My name is Albert Fields. I am a notary public." He took out an ID and showed it to me through the gap in the door. "I come on behalf of Mr. Robert Malone. I need you to sign some final documents related to your daughter-in-law's case." Something did not add up. Robert had not mentioned anything about additional documents. "Can you wait a moment? I am going to call Mr. Malone to confirm." The man smiled. "Of course, that is the correct thing to do." I closed the door and dialed Robert's number. He answered on the third ring. "Mrs. Margaret, is everything okay?" "There is a notary at my door. He says he comes from you with documents to sign." Silence on the other end of the line, but not normal silence. The silence of alarm. "What is his name?" "Albert Fields." "Mrs. Margaret, I did not send any notary. Do not open that door. Do not sign anything. Do you hear me? Call the police right now." My heart skipped a beat. "What?" "It is a trap. Victoria is trying something. Lock the door, do not go out, and call 911. I am on my way." He hung up. With trembling hands, I turned the additional deadbolt on the door. I ran to the living room window and peeked out carefully. The notary was no longer alone. There was a car parked in front of my house, a gray sedan, and inside in the driver's seat was Jerry, and next to him, Victoria. I backed away from the window, breathing fast. What did they intend to break in by force, rob something? Hurt me, I dialed 911 with shaking fingers. 911, what is your emergency? "There are suspicious people outside my house. They tried to trick me by pretending to be a notary. I think they want to break in." I gave my address. The operator told me a patrol car was on the way, but then I heard something that froze my blood. A key turning in the lock. I stood paralyzed. How did they have a key to my house? And then I remembered. Victoria had lived here for 3 years. She had probably made copies. The door opened or tried to open. The deadbolt I had installed stopped the entry. I heard curses from the other side. "Open the door, you old witch," shouted Victoria. "That house is mine. You have papers that belong to me." "You violated the restraining order," I shouted back. "The police are on their way." "I do not give a damn about the police. You are going to pay for what you did to me." Heavy blows on the door. Kicks. They were trying to break it down. I ran to the kitchen. I grabbed my cell phone and started recording. Everything. The screams, the blows, the evidence. "Jerry, break down the door," ordered Victoria like a woman possessed. More blows. The wood creaked. The frame splintered. Then I heard sirens. The patrol cars arrived just as the fake notary managed to force the lock. The door burst open, and there were the 3 of them frozen in the doorway with 4 officers pointing their weapons at them. "Hands up now." Jerry raised his hands immediately, a coward to the end. The fake notary tried to run, but an officer stopped him. Victoria stood there with pure hatred in her eyes, looking at me. "This does not end here," she hissed. "Back up. Ma'am, take a step back," ordered a female officer, stocky, about 40 years old. "You are violating a restraining order." "That house is mine. That old woman stole it from me." "The house is in the name of Margaret since 1993, said another officer, consulting his handheld computer. "You have no right to this property." They handcuffed all 3. Victoria screamed, kicked through insults that would make a sailor blush. Jerry went in silence, head down. The fake notary tried to negotiate. "Officer, this is a misunderstanding. You impersonated a public official. That is a federal crime." I kept recording everything, every second, every word. When they put them in the patrol cars, Victoria looked at me one last time through the window. "I hope you die alone and forgotten, you miserable old hag." The patrol cars left with sirens wailing. I let myself fall onto the living room sofa, shaking from head to toe. The cell phone almost fell from my hands. 10 minutes later, Robert arrived disheveled and without a tie, as if he had run out of his office. "Are you okay? Did they hurt you?" I am fine, just scared. This is extremely serious. Violation of a restraining order, breaking and entering identity theft. Victoria is not getting out of this. What is going to happen now? Now she goes to prison, and not for a few months, for years. Eleanor arrived shortly after, carrying grocery bags and with a distraught face. Lucy called me. "What happened?" I told her everything. My cousin hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. "It is over, Margaret. This time for real. That woman is never going to bother you again. That night, David arrived from work and found the splintered door and a house full of police taking statements. When I explained what happened, he went pale. "Mom, if something had happened to you if you had not locked the deadbolt—" "But I did. I learned to protect myself, son. That is something I should have done 3 years ago." In the following weeks, the legal process moved fast. Victoria Sanders was formally charged with asset fraud, document forgery, elder abuse violation of a restraining order, and breaking and entering. Jerry Stone as an accomplice, the fake notary for identity theft. All 3 were sentenced. Victoria 7 years in prison, Jerry 5 years, the fake notary 3 years. The day of the sentencing, I was in the courtroom with Eleanor by my side, with Robert representing me, and with David, my son, who finally was on the right side. When the judge read the sentence, Victoria looked at me from the defendant's bench. There was nothing left of that confident and manipulative woman who had entered my house 3 years ago. There was only a defeated criminal in an orange uniform. I did not feel joy, not even complete satisfaction, just relief, deep, absolute relief. We left the court under a clear sky. Eleanor took my arm. "How do you feel? Like I can finally breathe?" David walked behind us quiet. I waited for him. We stopped on the sidewalk. "Mom, I will never be able to apologize enough for—" "I know," I interrupted him. "And you are right. It will never be enough. But David, look at me." He looked up. He had tears in his eyes. "You made terrible mistakes. You failed me when I needed you most, but these last few months you have tried to fix it, little by little, and that counts. It does not erase the past, but it counts." What does that mean? It means I am willing to try, to rebuild what broke between us. It will not be fast. It will not be easy. But I am willing if you are too. He crumbled. He hugged me right there on the sidewalk, sobbing like a small child. "I am Mom, I swear. I am going to spend the rest of my life making it up to you." "I do not need you to spend your life making it up to me," I said, stroking his hair that was starting to gray. "I just need you to be a good son from now on, to respect me, to value me, to remember that this relationship is a two-way street. I will. I promise you." And for the first time in a long time, I believed him. That night, back home, my house reclaimed clean of snakes, Eleanor prepared a special dinner, her famous pot roast just like in the old days, freshly baked rolls. We sat the 3 of us in the dining room, and for the first time in 3 years, a dinner in that house was not charged with tension or fear. There was laughter, shared memories, future plans. After dinner, I went up to my bedroom, my true bedroom, not the maid's room, and sat on the bed Herbert had built. I took his photograph out of the drawer. "I did it, my love," I whispered. "I got our house back. I got our dignity back. And I am getting our son back." I could almost hear his voice responding. "I always knew you were stronger than you thought, Margaret." I put the photo away carefully and turned off the light. Outside, the city slept peacefully. Inside, in this house, with walls that had seen so much pain, there was finally peace. But this story was not over yet, because the most important chapter was missing, the one of reconstruction, the one of forgiveness, the one of turning ashes into something new and beautiful. And that chapter was just beginning. The house smelled of fresh coffee and warm, sweet bread. The windows were open, letting in the fresh breeze of an April morning. In the living room, Herbert's photographs smiled again from their frames on the wall. The porcelain china, or what was left of it after my fit of rage, rested in its cabinet with the broken pieces repaired with the Japanese technique of kintsugi, joining the fragments with golden resin that made the cracks visible but beautiful, like scars that tell stories of survival. I was in the kitchen stirring a pot of vegetable soup, but this time no one would rip the pot from my hands. This time I was cooking because I wanted to, because it was my kitchen, my house, my reclaimed life, Ms. Margaret. The voice of Lucy, my neighbor, came from the front door. "I am here. Where do you want me to put the boxes?" "In the living room, honey, thank you." Lucy entered carrying cardboard boxes full of blankets, pillows, and toiletries. Behind her came Eleanor, who had decided to move in permanently with me with more bags. Because the house was no longer just my refuge, it had become a refuge for others. 3 months ago, while drinking coffee with Eleanor in the living room, I had a revelation. I looked at the empty rooms. Now that David had moved into his own apartment, working hard to pay me every penny he owed, and I thought about all the women who were probably going through what I had gone through. Elderly women being stripped by their own families, abused, ignored, erased from their own lives. "Cousin," I said to Eleanor, "what would you think if we turned this house into something more gee?" And so Herbert House was born, a temporary shelter for older women in situations of family or asset abuse, a place where they could stay while they resolved their legal problems, regained their strength, rebuilt their lives. It was not a nursing home. It was not charity. It was a home. Eleanor used her contacts to get free legal support for the women who arrived. Robert Malone offered his services pro bono 2 days a week. Lucy, who had become like a granddaughter to me, helped with social media and outreach. And I cooked. I listened. I shared my story. I showed them that it was possible to get up after the hardest fall. In 6 months, we had helped 14 women. 14 stories of pain that turned into stories of resilience. That morning, we were expecting number 15. Her name was Stella, 72 years old. Her son and daughter-in-law had left her on the street after selling her house, which was actually Stella's, and keeping the money. Robert was handling her case. The doorbell rang at 10 o'clock sharp. I opened the door. There she was, a woman hunched over with a sweater too big for her, a small suitcase full of patches and eyes that had cried so much they seemed dry. "Mrs. Stella." She nodded without speaking. "Come in, please. This is your house now." Her eyes filled with tears. "Really? Really?" I led her inside. I showed her room clean with windows overlooking the rose garden I had replanted with fresh sheets and a knitted blanket. Nothing fancy, but dignified. Cozy. "Is this for me? For you. As long as you need." She sat on the bed and finally cried. She cried like I had cried so many times. She cried with that deep sob of someone who has carried pain for too long. I sat next to her and took her wrinkled hand so similar to mine. "I went through this too," I told her softly. "I also thought there was no way out, that I was too old, too weak, too useless. But I wasn't, and neither are you. It is just that my son—" I know, it hurts more when it is your own blood. But Stella, listen to me well. You are worth more than what they made you believe. And you are not alone. Not anymore. That afternoon, we organized a meeting in the living room. The 5 women who currently lived at Herbert House sat in a circle. Stella, still shy, joined in. One by one, they shared their stories. Susan, 66 years old, stripped of her sewing workshop by her daughter. Betty, 70 years old, mistreated by her son-in-law, who blamed her for all the marriage problems. Cecilia, 63, whose drug-addicted son stole her pension month after month. Different stories, but the same pain, the same betrayal, the same feeling of being invisible. "And what did you do?" asked Stella with a trembling voice. "We fought back," Susan replied proudly. "With the help of Mr. Malone, I got my workshop back, and now my daughter does not even dare to come near. I got a restraining order against my son-in-law," Betty added. "My daughter had to choose. She chose her husband. It hurts, I'm not going to lie, but at least now I have peace." "And I," said Cecilia with a tired smile, "put my son into rehab. By force. It was the hardest thing I did in my life. But if I hadn't done it, I would be dead. Or he would be." Stella looked at them with something that was starting to look like hope. "Do you really think I can too?" "We do not think," I said firmly. We know, because we lived it, and because we are here to help you. The months that followed were of healing, not just for the women who passed through Herbert House, but for me too. Every story I heard, every legal victory we celebrated, every time I saw a woman recover her dignity, it was like healing a part of my own wound. David came to visit me every Sunday. He brought flowers. Sometimes he helped with repairs around the house. He had learned basic carpentry on YouTube. Little by little, conversation after conversation, the abyss between us became narrower. One afternoon, while repairing a patio door, he stopped and looked at me. "Mom, do you think one day you will be able to forgive me completely?" I thought about it before answering. I do not know, David. There are things that are not forgotten. But I paused, choosing my words carefully. I am learning that forgiveness does not mean forgetting. It means deciding not to let the past control your present. And does your present include having me in your life? Yes, I said after a moment. But on different terms. I am no longer the mother who lets herself be trampled for fear of losing her son. Now I am the mother who respects herself. And if you want to be in my life, you have to respect that. I do. I respect it. And I admire you, Mom. What you did, what you are doing with this house, is incredible. I felt something warm in my chest. It was not the blind, unconditional love of before. It was something more mature, more real. Thank you, son. A year after Victoria was sentenced, Herbert House had become a reference in the community. Articles in the local newspaper, an interview on state radio, donations from neighbors, more volunteer lawyers. We had helped 37 women, 37 recovered lives. And each one of them reminded me why it had been worth fighting, why it had been worth breaking those porcelain plates in a fit of desperate rage, why it had been worth enduring every insult, every humiliation, every moment of pain, because from the deepest pain, the greatest strength can be born. One December afternoon just before Christmas, I was in the garden watering the rose bushes when Eleanor came out with the phone in her hand. "Cousin, you have to hear this." It was a voice message from a young woman voice broken by crying. "Mrs. Margaret, you do not know me. My name is Patricia. I heard your interview on the radio. My grandmother is going through something similar to what you went through. Her own children are stripping her of her house. I do not know what to do. I do not have money for lawyers. But when I heard you speak, I thought maybe you could help us, or at least tell us how to start. Please, my grandmother is 74 years old and is losing faith in everything. But your story gave her hope, and me too." I stood there with the hose dripping in my hands and tears running down my cheeks. "Are you going to call her?" asked Eleanor. "Of course I am going to call her, and I am going to help her, like someone should have helped me when I needed it most." That Christmas was different from all the previous ones. We decorated Herbert House with colored lights, a tree in the living room, and garlands in every window. The 6 women who lived with us helped with dinner. Gingerbread cookies, eggnog roast turkey apple salad. David came with his new girlfriend, a genuine, hard-working woman who treated me with respect from the first moment. Lucy brought her family. Robert stopped by with his wife and children. The house that had seen so much pain, so much abuse, so much darkness, was now overflowing with laughter, hugs, and light. After dinner, when everyone was chatting in the living room, I went up to my bedroom. I took out Herbert's photograph. I held it against my chest. "Look what we did, my love," I whispered. "This house we built together is now saving lives. I wish you could see it." I could almost feel his smile, his pride, his love that never really left. I went down the stairs. On the landing, I stopped to look at the scene in the living room, women of all ages laughing together, sharing stories, finding family in unexpected places. And I realized something. I had lost a lot. 3 years of my life, $60,000, the innocence of blindly believing in family. part of the relationship with my son, but I had also won. I had gained strength I did not know I had, purpose I never imagined, a chosen family, not of blood but of spirit, and above all I had recovered myself. The Margaret that existed before fear and loneliness convinced me to accept crumbs when I deserved a full banquet. I went down the last step and entered the living room. All eyes turned to me. "A toast," suggested Eleanor, raising her glass of eggnog. "Yes," I said, taking mine. "I want to say something." The room went silent. This year, I learned something I want to share with all of you. I began looking especially at the women of Herbert House. I learned that never, never is it too late to defend yourself. That age is not weakness, it is experience. That family love does not mean letting yourself be destroyed. And that when you hit rock bottom, when you think you can't take anymore, that is when you discover what you are really made of. Susan wiped away a tear. Betty nodded vigorously. Stella, who had already been with us for 3 months and whose case was progressing well, smiled for the first time since she arrived. If there is anyone listening to this who is going through something similar, I continued, I want you to know you are worthy. Your lives matter. Your dignity is not negotiable, and never ever are you alone. There are always hands willing to help. You just have to dare to ask. Cheers, shouted Eleanor. Cheers. We all responded. The sound of glasses clinking filled the room, and at that moment, looking at all those women who had found strength in their scars, I knew I had found my true purpose. It was not just to live. It was to live with dignity, with strength, with the certainty that I deserved respect, and helping others discover the same. That night, when everyone left and the house became silent again, I sat on the back porch. The stars shone above the city, the air smelled of wet earth and roses. And for the first time in years, perhaps in decades, I felt completely at peace, because I had learned the most important lesson. True wealth is not in what you possess. It is in what you do not allow them to take from you, your dignity, your worth, your voice. And those things, once you recover them, no one, absolutely no one, can snatch them away again.